Hey friends, welcome back this week. I want to do a just kind of a wrap up today. Maybe a final thought about how to go about quitting the old way of doing church and stepping into this whole new way of interacting with the greatness of God and the presence of Jesus in our lives, in our day-to-day. And to do that, I want us to check out this story from the life of Jesus. Really, it is just one of my favorite stories. It is such a small little snippet out of the New Testament. It gives a ton of room to imagine in between the lines how this whole thing might have played out. But there is really no doubt, in my mind at least, of the message that I need to take to heart, and maybe it would be true for you likewise. It's in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 40, and I'm just going to read it here for you. Let me call it up. It goes like this. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Or indeed, only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Mary has chosen the better, and it won't be taken away from her. Look, this is the story of two women who were very, very close to the heart of Jesus. We read about them in various places in the New Testament account. Jesus and his disciples are on the move. We learn about that movement from other texts more than in this one. And they arrive at a village called Bethany. And they come to the home of Martha. Now, it may have been Mary's home also. We don't know that for certain. But it is definitely Martha's house. And so picture this. 13 men arrive at the home of this one woman. 13 men arrive at the home of one woman. And it's not just any 13 men, but it's 13 men who include Jesus. Imagine them coming and showing up at your door. The text says that Martha opens the door and is excited to see Jesus. She welcomes him in, opens her home to him and to the disciples. How would you feel if that happened? We can only speculate. But I'm pretty certain most of us would know what we would probably do. And it's the same thing that Martha does. She gets busy. She's straightening the house. She's fixing things up. She is probably cooking and cleaning and preparing things. You know, it's all part of what the heart of hospitality does. It's natural. It is even needed. You know what it's like at your house when these kinds of things happen. And so in Mary's head, she's going, why isn't Mary helping? That's what's going on in Martha's head. Why isn't Mary helping? It's her house, it's her sister. Mary knows what's going on. She probably knows exactly what's going on in the heart of Martha. It's her sister. But Mary does something that probably blew everyone away. Now, this is part of the speculation. But I think it's really consistent with both the biblical account, biblical writing, as well as what we know about history, what it was like in those days. Mary does something that probably blew everyone away except Jesus. Mary didn't help. Mary didn't serve. Mary didn't get up and ask her sister, hey, what can I do to help make this room an acceptable place for all of these men? No, Mary went and sat at the feet of Jesus, listening to him teach, absorbing his words, sitting at the feet of someone. Here, it didn't mean subservient. It wasn't the position of lowliness and humility. No, in this context, in this story, Mary took the position of a student, the position of a learner, and she did it all while her sister was cleaning. We've got to get the contrast of what's going on between these two women. So for me, as I read the story, there's two lessons. They're connected, but they are really very different lessons. Here's the first one. And anytime that I study through this passage, I feel compelled to point it out. This isn't some pithy little story with a moral. This was reality. And I think it rocked their world. And it should rock our world today. Mary wasn't helping in the kitchen where she belonged. Mary actually took the position of a man. It was right and proper for women to go off and not be seen and not be heard, to serve the men who had gathered there. And that Jesus would encourage her to sit and listen to him as he taught in the house was, in itself, just mind-blowingly radical. We don't understand that because women in this day and age sit at the feet of teachers all of the time. But that wasn't true in Jesus' day. Women were openly despised by Judaism of that time. Women were exempt from the study of the Torah. Many rabbis actively discouraged women from learning anything at all. But Jesus didn't see that division. In fact, he openly challenged it. Martha might have been busy doing traditional women's work, cleaning and cooking and preparing behind the scenes, while the men were busy with the important stuff. You know, to me, Jesus is making a statement here. I can't see it any other way. And really, it's the same one that I believe that he makes today. This story, to me, is a bold and constant reminder that when we follow Jesus, men and women stand on equal ground. Now, I know there's a ton of history, both in church as well as in culture, that puts men and women in different places and different roles and different rankings and all of that stuff that goes along with that. And I'm not naive in thinking that this is just a simple 1, 2, 3 issue. No, it takes some good scholarship to dig through this, and some openness and willingness to both talk and be heard. But I want to say this to you. As followers of Jesus, we need to be bold in our affirmation of women who follow in Mary's footsteps. Women who follow in the footsteps of great learners and great disciples and great leaders. And we need to be people who are gracious to all those, both men and women, who continue to openly and actively and without shame and without prejudice follow in the footsteps of Jesus and listen to his voice and do what he is calling them to do. Now, sometimes when I read this passage and study through it, it seems like almost a sidebar issue, but it's not. I think it's front and center. And here's my second reason for loving this story. Martha was distracted by all of the preparations that had to be made, no doubt. And she came to Jesus and said, "Lord, my sister has left me all alone to do this work by myself. Look at her. She's just over there sitting at your feet, doing nothing but learning. She's out there sitting with all the men, for crying out loud. Tell her to get up and help me." And then Jesus says these words. We read them before. I want to read them again. It's verse 42. "Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Man, is Martha not a living, breathing metaphor of just people in general, especially nowadays? Luke writes that she is distracted and worried and upset about many things, and then busy doing stuff. She's cleaning and cooking and serving, but my goodness, we are people who are busy being distracted and worried about many things. We are modern day Marthas, I think. Have you ever been working hard only to watch your brother or your sister or your husband sit around and watch TV or text or looking at their phone and doing nothing while you're out there working hard? You know how that makes you feel? I imagine Martha had some of those feelings, and maybe they were even more intense than what we experience, given who was at her house. I almost detect a tone of voice in Jesus' response to her. Martha, Martha. You know, there's nothing in this story that is belittling or criticizing to Martha, or critical of serving or hospitality. Quite the opposite. Jesus just says in this moment, and honestly in every moment, there is something better. There is something more needful. There is something of greater value that is always right there in front of our noses. Jesus is there. He is the better. He is the greater. The thing that is more needful is right there in front of Martha. And yet she misses him in her zeal to serve him. Don't miss this. What is the thing that is more needful, both then and now? Isn't it being attentive to the presence of Jesus? Isn't it simply staying focused on the words and example of Jesus? Even in the midst of our study of theology and our work as the church, in the midst of a world that seems to be pretty much turned upside down, isn't what is most needful is staying focused on the words, example of Jesus? Why? Come on. It's because Jesus changes things. Jesus changes everything. And Jesus wasn't just radical. Jesus was fundamentally countercultural. He always has been, and he always will be. And this is a story for those who have learned to stop what they are doing long enough to listen to the words of Jesus. Or maybe it's a story for those who haven't learned to stop what they are doing long enough to listen to the words of Jesus. To be people who learn to stare down our fears and frustrations long enough to experience his presence in the moment. Yeah, it sounds pretty mystical, but at heart it really isn't. This is a story for those who are willing to sit at the feet of Jesus long enough, to stay there long enough, to linger long, to pull up a chair, to get comfortable, to be in his presence, to be near his word, to be near his spirit, and really learn from his character and really taste his mercy and his grace. Yeah, it takes sitting and lingering long enough so that we really get to experience what it's to learn what it's really like to experience the act of quitting, this quitting going to church and beginning to learn to live, learning to live the life that Jesus died to give us. It's really what this is all about. So as we remember Jesus around the table of communion today, let me ask you these questions. Whose shoes are you walking in today? Are you distracted? Are you worried? Are you busy? Are you frustrated? Is Martha your heritage today? Are you ready to linger at the feet of Jesus like Mary did and let his presence completely disrupt your world and make you whole? That's why he died. And in rising from the dead, that's why he proved that his life and his words can be trusted. Till next time, see ya.